Good evening, viewers, and welcome to this edition of Energy This Week. I'm Ademola Adedoyin.
One day, we had a vision to improve the way people access their fuel products. Now, 1 in 5 cars drives on our fuel. But that was not enough. So we pioneered the provision of cleaner, safer fuel to local industries through the fastest growing gas supply network in sub-Saharan Africa. Still, that was not enough. So we invested in the acquisition of rigs for oil and gas exploration. Strive towards our future when we, a proudly Nigerian company, will offer the complete solution to Nigeria's energy needs. Owando, the future is here.
Tonight, we are taking another look at the Nigerian Content Act of 2010 and the impact of the law since it was enacted over 3 years ago. But first, let's review the news of the week.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to News of the Week. My name is Perpetua Ebunlo-Alhacho. First headlines. No cost for alarm over fuel supply. NNPC and IPMAN assure Nigerians. Paucity of funds, others hindering marginal fields development, say operators. Now the details. 3 strategic institutions in the petroleum supply chain have cautioned Nigerians against panic buying of petroleum products, assuring that the country has sufficient stock of premium motor spirit, popularly known as petrol, to meet domestic demand. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, which spoke on its collaboration with Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and the Petroleum Products Marketing Company, PPMC, advised the public against panic buying of fuel, assuring there was no threat of an impending fuel scarcity in the country. Its national president, Alhaji Aminu Abdul Kadri, who gave the assurance at a media briefing, warned against rumors over impending fuel scarcity in the country. Abdul Kadri said there was stable fuel supply in the country, urging members of the public to avoid panic buying as there was no reason for that. He also said they are loading petroleum products adequately from all NNPC depots across the country, adding that there are no worries about scarcity because NNPC and PPMC have assured them of sufficient stock in the country. Marginal field operators in the nation's oil and gas industry have bemoaned their challenges and handicaps since they got their fields in the aftermath of the bid round held in 2003. Their concern emanated from the fact that out of the 24 oil fields awarded in 2003, only 7 fields are producing, averaging an aggregate gross production of 27,200 barrels of oil per day and 35 million standard cubic feet per day of gas. This accounts for about 2% of national production. Speaking at the Marginal Field Workshop organized in Lagos, Mr. Debo Fagbami, Chief Operating Officer, CEO Engr Limited, said that lack of access to fund is the greatest challenge facing the marginal field owners. According to him, most of the field owners have not been able to raise about $30 million to invest in their oil fields. Apart from that, they lack technical know-how. As a result, they have not been able to put up credible and bankable business plan. He explained that some of the oil field owners also have partnership complications as they were strange bird fellows from the outset, thereby stalling whatever fruitful decisions that might signal their takeoff. That's all for News of the Week. Thanks for watching. I'm Perpetua Ebunlo-Alhacho. Join us again next week.
Welcome back. We took further interest in the Nigerian Content Act following our interviews with the top official of the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, PETAN, whose verdict was an overwhelming applause for the Act and the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, NCDMB, the board with the mandate to superintend over the implementation of the law. For the average citizen, perhaps the fact of Nigeria being an oil-producing country and being able to export over 2 million barrels per day to run the nation's economy is cheering enough. That citizen will probably grow if he knows the opportunities that go with such production, which for decades Nigeria did not take advantage of. For instance, between 1956 and 2006, when the Nigerian content policy was initiated, that's a period of 50 years, experts calculate that Nigeria may have recorded an estimated capital flight of about $380 billion in the oil sector. During that same period, Nigeria's oil and gas industry exported about 2 million jobs to other countries from operations by various operators in the sector. Indeed, until 2006, more than 95% of the jobs in the industry were done abroad. Now, fast forward to 2013. Following the enactment of the Nigerian Content Act in 2010, And by the end of last year, official records indicate that 90% local content has been achieved in engineering, while 50% has been recorded in fabrication. In monetary terms, close to $170 billion has been retained in Nigeria from such operations as procurement, fabrication, technical services, engineering, and research and development. This positive development has been brought about by this law and its implementation under the watch of NCDMB. So, how far has this law worked in the interest of Nigeria? And how can it be made to work even better than it is doing currently? This was the thrust of our interface with the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, NCDMB, Engineer Ernest Nwapa, when we called at his office in Yenegwa, Bayelsa State recently. Sit back and enjoy this encounter with Engineer Nwapa. Engineer Nwapa, you're welcome to the platform again.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Let us start by looking at the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board in the context of where we are coming from. Now, between 1956 and year 2006, Nigeria, given the figures available, must have lost close to $380 billion to capital flight. Over 2 million jobs were lost during the same period of 50 years. Now, the Nigerian Content Act came in year 2010. During our first interview with you, you did speak about some of the strides that the Act has been able to achieve. What is the situation today?
Well, thank you for that question. It gives me an opportunity to give you some kind of overview and to put some of the discussion in context. Okay. You've got to realize that we're coming from a situation where the industry was designed to operate on the basis of importation. Get the goods from outside, get the services from outside, get as fast as possible to the oil field and to first oil. Get the revenue to government, and government then runs its programs with the revenue. The industry was not really interested in how the value of their work would impact directly on the country. So we had the situation you've just described. What is very clear to us today, and this is by sheer dint of perseverance and strident implementation of the Nigerian Content Act, is that Nigerians have stepped in to the space. Nigerians are now playing very confidently in the oil and gas space, and it is impacting on the other sectors of the economy very clearly. So we are seeing increasingly on a daily basis new areas of participation, new zones of activity, new skills of endeavor, from relatively non-impactful to very complex operations being handled by Nigerians and Nigerian companies. I've just come back from a trip to Congo, Brazzaville. And this was on the invitation of the government of the Republic of. The whole invitation was for Nigeria to come and validate the efforts that country is making to start doing a local content implementation. Our own model has been touted across the world as very successful and impactful. And it was a thing of pride for us from the board to be invited and to be very well received in that country. Our ideas were frequently referred to, and the reference of the Nigerian content activities globally is becoming something of a common trend. So, to be specific in answering your question, we are seeing additional growth in engineering man-hours. After our visit together, we had participated in the inauguration of the major center of excellence in Nigeria, the Delta Africa headquarters building. That is where over 1 million man-hours of engineering for a GINA project will be domiciled. And that is just the beginning of that process. We've been to over 4 other yards. We've seen the sellout of living quarters, something that 4 years ago, we were told bluntly that it cannot be done in Nigeria. Today, this is the second or third one that is being done in Nigeria. Components of it were made in Avion, in Port Harcourt. The superstructure itself was made in Niger Dock, and it was designed by a local engineering company. So there are areas of progress that you can measure.
Okay, as a matter of fact, in Nwapa, I was coming to those specifics because up to 2006, about 95% of all these jobs were still being done offshore.
Yeah.
Now, what is your estimate of the extent of participation of Nigerian oil service companies now?
I'll say that in engineering, we can very confidently say that over 80% of engineering man-hours are done in Nigeria, and nobody's arguing about that. The operators, the service companies, all are comfortable with doing engineering in Nigeria. Some of them still do part of it on their own, but most people outsource it to Nigerian engineering companies. Fabrication is the same thing. We are quite comfortable doing the requirements of the Act, over 50% by tonnage of fabrication of all sorts of structures, both platforms, jackets, even Christmas tree frames, specialized pressure vessels, casings of different process units, name it. Any structure that you can do the engineering design and show the elements can be fabricated in yards that have been upgraded in Nigeria over the past 3 to 5 years. Now, that exercise on its own is a major pressure driver to bring in foreign direct investment, because for each of the fabrication yards, even existing ones that are now equipped to do this work, people have pumped in millions of dollars. At last count, we have identified over $5 billion.
$5 billion within a period of 3-4 years.
Yes, and you can check this out. Most of the fab yards that are existing have had to increase their craneage. They have increased the capacity to bend steel. They've had to increase the capacity to their lay down areas, their hard stand areas, their warehouses, their paint stores, specialized equipment, boring equipment. Everywhere you go, it's the same story at Avion, at Intel's camp, at Niger Dock, at Castec. Everywhere you look in Nigeria today, there is upgrade or new yards coming up. And these things create jobs for the people. This is not to talk about the work that can now be placed in those yards on account of their new capacity. When we look at that index, we now begin to get a figure nearing $7 billion. And this is a recurrent activity, because if we have $2 billion in 2013 going into these yards collectively and businesses, then you can imagine what will happen in 2014 and 15 and post PIB especially. The major area of challenge for us is in procurement. Manufacturing remains a challenge, but as we always say, this is not a sprint. This our effort is a long distance
it's a
run.
long haul.
It's a long haul. But we've taken what I believe is the right step. We've built the basis to justify that there is enough market and that there is government will. Our president, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, has said it repeatedly. If you listen to his statements everywhere, he's talking about our desire to begin to build our own things in Nigeria and use it. So we have 100% support from the very top. At the ministerial level, we also have a stoic dependence on the minister. We are working to make sure that these things that are being imported wholesale from abroad under our Nigerian Content Equipment Certification Strategy, that we are ensuring that everybody supplying goods and bringing procurements into the Nigerian oil and gas industry is laying a foundation to start component manufacturing that will lead to the full manufacturing. Today, many of the components that we see in valves, that we see in even subsea systems, are assembled here to start with. And then we have every day we are inspecting areas where people have bought land, not to build residential buildings, not to build, but to build manufacturing plants, pipe mills, valve assembly plants. If you go into the free trade zone in Engr, you go and look at the plants in the Jagal free trade zone, what Castec is doing in Warri. Every yard is building up equipment, building up some manufacturing, and that will lead us to the need for us to now gather all these initiatives and put it into that strategy for developing industrial parks to further mobilize newcomers.
Yeah. Engineer Nwapa, you've emphasized the fact that there is a political will on the part of the government, and it is very obvious. Now, people still talk about the IOCs, and some of them not willing to give some jobs to indigenous oil service companies. And some have made the headlines in the press. I want you to look at this. Given that your board has got that support from the president, from the minister, how are you utilizing this support to ensure that it works in favor of Nigerians and Nigerian oil service companies?
Indeed, that's one of the major roles we play. To beyond advocacy, beyond promoting these concepts, we are right there on ground to fight, to be the bulwark of the government, to make sure that where we see opportunity, we drive Nigerians into those niches. We are also there to receive feedback from the service companies, and in our consultative arrangements and engagements, we are always open to service companies that have any difficulties with getting the best out of the opportunities provided by the law. I'll give you examples. There are companies who see IOCs and indeed even indigenous operating companies doing things that are inimical to their investments and to their interests. And most times it takes a simple call. We don't operate that hotline arrangement. So anybody in the board, my phone number, my personal phone number is known to most people in the industry. So from my phone number to the heads of various units in the board, we have that access clear. Now, what do we do when we get complaints? We investigate. And once we investigate, we have the integrity, we have the respect of the industry that when we write a simple cautionary letter, people sit up. It is something that we have developed over time. The recognition of our role by the law and the integrity that we are serious with what we say and that we have the support at the highest levels. That is something that comes very handy in taking tough decisions that we've taken with IOCs or indeed local operators that want to deviate from the provisions.
Okay, this is interesting. Will you want to cite one or two specific cases where you got the IOCs to reverse what ordinarily would not have worked in the interest of Nigeria?
We have very major cases of IOCs saying that, and that sometimes it's true, that they can't find pipes manufactured in Nigeria, so they're going to import. And we have been able to stop that, reverse it, and get them to direct them to existing pipe mills, and we've gotten them to stop, to reverse an order that was being issued in India to SCC in Abuja, not once, not twice. There are cases where rigs, there's a case or two that we are handling right now, where rigs that are not compliant have been mobilized. Now let me tell you how serious this is. If you bring a rig into the country, it's supposed to It costs so much money to mobilize it to the oil field. Now, when a rig is there, ready to drill, and you stop it, it has major implications. But we have come to the point where we are saying to the operators, it's 4 years since we started running this law. You are by now supposed to comply to a very high level, and we are no longer that flexible about understanding some of these difficulties. So we've had to put some drilling operations on hold. It's not an easy task, considering the impact it can have on the economy.
Yeah, thanks so much. We look at the indigenous oil service companies, and we commend what is happening to them. But even at that, because it's just starting this journey, like you observed, the issue of funding actually comes in, because this is a highly capital intensive industry we are talking about. And there is the issue of the Nigerian Content Fund, which will help alleviate some of their challenges. But hints that we are getting from some of them is that accessing this fund has been some Herculean task. What are the issues?
The fund, let's again put it in context.
Okay.
This is a fund that started at zero level. When we started, there was no fund. The fund was inaugurated because the law was passed. Now we started, the first challenge was to design a sustainable fund structure. So that took almost the whole of 1 year to get all the necessary approvals, get all the inputs, all the various stakeholder consultations. We had to talk to all the IOC finance directors and managers, talk to all the bank CEOs and their operatives. We had to talk to regulatory agencies like Central Bank. We had to get a legal financial consultant to design the fund and to define the things that we need to do with the fund, and the structure that will be very transparent and not subject to abuse. That's one of the driving forces. We recognize in designing the structure that the aim of the crafters of the Nigerian Content Act was not to create another bank for the industry. Rather, it was to create a fund that local service companies will have access to.
Okay.
But it is our responsibility to make sure that there is a structure around it and that it is not abused or is not open to abuse. So we had succeeded in doing that. In the meantime, the fund was building up. So the pilots came, we set up, we partnered with PETAN.
Okay.
Because we believe that PETAN has the major, critical mass for the service companies. And we had used PETAN because we wanted a process-driven selection process. As you know, in our country, if you're not careful, even when you access or you grant access to these funds to deserving people, there's always a question around it.
Yeah.
So we wanted it, being a fund that belongs to the industry, we wanted the industry to play the role. We also had to set up an industry advisory committee made up of all of representatives of the IOCs, representatives of Bank of Industry, representatives of the PETAN, representatives of OCTAN, and the board. So we sit down and decide how structures will be run, what areas we want to focus on, what is the key necessity. Access to the funds, to the guarantee side of the fund, is where we are having a small issue. We believe that the fund managers and ourselves had not done enough publicity for the fund. So a lot of people did not really understand that what you get, the benefits you get from that fund are amazing. For instance, if you take a loan from your bank against the guarantee from the fund.
The fund,
Yeah. That is the structure we have. You will take a loan from your bank against a partial guarantee.
Okay, so the fund will guarantee
your loan. That guarantee comes with so many other benefits, but people tended to just look at that guarantee. There is a 50% interest rebate that goes to you just to help Nigerian companies get these loans at more competitive interest rates. There's also a cushioning effect that you can get by design and by request from your bank with this guarantee to extend your tenure of the loan.
Okay.
And these are things,
should the need arise?
should the need arise. And these are things that we have directed the fund managers to visit every participating bank and indeed potential participating banks to make sure that the industry, the banking industry, understands fully. About a month ago or 6 weeks ago, I had a meeting with all the bank CEOs and we worked out the modalities. Going forward, we are saying that banks that grant loans to local service companies under this program will get a commensurate proportion of the funds in their own treasury.
Okay.
So we are creating a competition.
Okay.
Now.
Thanks so much, Engineer Nwapa. We thank you so much for your time, and we will not hesitate to call on you again to come on to this platform.
We're always here for you.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
One day, we had a vision to improve the way people access their fuel products. Now, 1 in 5 cars drives on our fuel. But that was not enough. So we pioneered the provision of cleaner, safer fuel to local industries through the fastest growing gas supply network in sub-Saharan Africa. Still, that was not enough. So we invested in the acquisition of rigs for oil and gas exploration. Strive towards our future when we, a proudly Nigerian company, will offer the complete solution to Nigeria's energy needs. Owando, the future is here.
Well, viewers, for the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, NCDMB, and indeed the Nigerian Content Act of 2010, that is how far the journey has covered. Certainly, like all laws, and as in every human endeavor, even though major strides have been recorded, there is still a lot to be done to get the nation to the promised land. For comments, views, and suggestions, reach us on info@energythisweek.ng.tv. You can access this edition again by visiting YouTube/EnergyThisWeek. Till I come your way next week, I remain yours sincerely, Ademola Adedoyin. Bye for now.